Hello, my name is Cleo Harris, and I work with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. And today I'm going to take a slight step back from just talking about habitat projects and assessments and share our efforts in developing priority management areas for Lake Erie. And I'm giving you this presentation on behalf of the Lake Erie Committee's Habitat Task Group. In 2016, the Great Lakes Fishery Commission's Council of Lakes Committee, the CLC, adopted a draft set of environmental principles, the premise of which is that sustainable fisheries can occur across the Great Lakes Basin if functional habitats are protected or improved in each lake through a systematic, adaptive, cumulative, and collaborative approach that accommodates fishery value and decisions to act on manageable anthropogenic stresses. Stemming from the CLC's environmental principles, the objectives of the Lake Erie Habitat Task Group became to systematically develop and maintain a list of functional habitats and impediments for species specified by the Lake Erie Committee's fish community objectives. From this large list, the Lake Erie Committee could then define a short list of environmental priorities and actions, with the intention that this list would then be used to identify priority management areas, develop strategic research directions, and against which document key habitat and research projects. So with that in mind, we developed a three-step approach where first the technical experts identified functional habitats for each life stage of each species identified in the Lake Erie fish community objectives. And where we could, we also identified remediation actions that could be executed to improve impeded functional habitats. In step two, we applied criteria derived from the Council of Lakes Committee and the Lake Erie Committee, followed up by step three, where the Habitat Task Group added up all the scores to calculate priority management area scores for all of the areas where actions could be taken to have a significant impact on production of identified species over the next 5 to 20 years. The result of the PMA exercise in Lake Erie was the identification of 116 functional habitats, of which 28 ranked as high to very high, which is better than the 75th percentile for score totals. And so within these high or very high PMAs, there were 102 actions that were identified, with 62 of those being management actions and 40 of those being research actions. These actions range in nature from being very site-specific, like a shoreline softening project at Brandenburg Park on Lake St. Clair, to more regional actions like watershed actions to limit nutrients and sediment runoff in the Western Basin. So if you look at the map on the right, if we were to make a map of all the PMAs that ranked as high or very high from the prioritization exercise, this is what it might look like for the whole basin. So they're kind of all over the basin. Once we were able to show that we could generate the scores, we focused on the need to be able to visualize these priority areas. This eventually led us to develop this phased approach where phase one was developing the initial concept, and then phase two is working on transitioning that flat file data set into a spatial data set with layers and a viewer to quickly access those layers that are connected to the data set. Phase three will be expanding on the viewer concept and developing a functional forward and backward facing geospatial interface that will allow us to update the data in the layers while also being able to produce priority management area scores that can be viewed by the end user. The last phase will again be this loop of updating and refining the data sets as new information becomes available and habitat projects are implemented. The Habitat Task Group is currently at phase two. We're just about finishing up and starting to turn our focus to phase three, but we've got a lot of work done there, and I'll show you some of that as we move forward. Thanks to some funding and effort from the Great Lakes Fish Commission and technical experts associated with the Great Lakes Aquatic Habitat Framework, we've been able to develop a layer for almost all of the data in our PMA dataset. It's taken a fair amount of effort to define the boundaries for all the functional habitats and then refine those based on task group feedback. We used spatial data that's available in peer-reviewed literature and already developed GIS layers when we could, and then we turned to professional guidance from the technical experts to fill in the gaps. Through the process, we've also begun to look at, or at least look into, new tools that have been developed to help us expand on already identified functional habitats and identify where we have data gaps. Another aspect we developed in phase two was the viewer, which you can see two screenshots of here. In this viewer, we're able to link the PMA dataset to developed layers and have some filter features included that will aid in our internal reviews. With this viewer, we're able to see critical data from the PMA dataset in a table view as seen in the top image, and then have the ability to select rows of data that then get highlighted in the map view as seen in the lower image. The map view also has functions to bring in additional GIS information, such as aquatic ecological units that were developed by the Great Lakes Aquatic Habitat Framework technical experts. This is kind of our basic concept for where we're heading into phase 3. But we acknowledge there's a lot more work to do here, and we hope to expand off of this point. As I said, we have a little more work to do in phase 2, but our focus is shifting towards phase 3, and we're beginning to develop our processes for developing our desired functionality of that forward and backwards facing geospatial interface, as well as the process for updating and refining those data layers. This is going to be probably the top priority for the Habitat Task Group as we move forward. All of this effort on Lake Erie PMAs allowed us to successfully develop a tool for implementing the CLC environmental principles. This allowed us to identify priority management areas for the sustainability of fisheries in Lake Erie. We've collaboratively identified the cumulative functional habitats where protection, restoration, or enhancement actions on manageable anthropogenic stresses could benefit the production of desired species. Through the systematic evaluation of potential actions against fisheries value and the CLC environmental principles, we've also created a tool for defining priority management areas within the Lake Erie Basin that is readily adaptable to the progress of actions addressing stressors and also changing fisheries values. The members of the Habitat Task Group would all agree that we have more work to do with our PMAs, as they're not complete, but we have been able to produce so far is being used in a variety of ways. The PMAs were used to develop the Lake Erie environmental priorities, and the development of our spatial layers for the PMAs have got a lot of interest from other groups around the basin that are looking to develop priorities for their own areas of focus. A number of fish habitat improvement projects have been identified and implemented successfully as a result of programs like NOAA's Great Lakes Fish Habitat Restoration Regional Partnership Grants and the Great Lakes Commission's Coastal Conservation and Habitat Restoration Program. Both of those programs have used the Lake Erie environmental priorities to direct efforts for projects outside of areas of concerns. And we've also, on top of the habitat projects, we've also had discussions with other groups that are interested in being able to use the spatial data that we developed to help focus their priorities. Groups like the Lake Erie Partnership, Environment Climate Change Canada, and the St. Clair Detroit River System Initiative. And in this year's Habitat Task Group report, we capture a number of projects that provide us with information to better refine our understanding of functional habitats, like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Whitefish Spawning Evaluation, or USGS's project with mini-dot loggers to better understand water quality parameters like dissolved oxygen and temperature associated with fish location information, and the multiple efforts to quantify habitat suitability in various Lake Erie tributaries. Additional projects in the report showcase work intended to improve functional habitats in priority management areas, like the coastal wetland work that's going on through the H2 Ohio program. To learn more about these projects like this, I encourage you to check out the Habitat Task Group report, where we do have additional projects on top of what I just named off here. With that, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I also want to thank the Lake Erie Habitat Task Group, which I have listed here, all of the members. And then a special thanks to Jeff Tyson, Catherine Rising, Kevin Worley, Ken Yee, Lucas Vanderbilt, Alyssa Rausch, Rebecca Poisson, and Ty Gerke for helping us achieve all of that hard work that we were able to get to with the priority management areas this past year. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email address, as well as Stephen Markovitz, my co-chair for the Habitat Task Group, his email address is here. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you.